What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Bronx Attorney Broadcast. I'm your host, Will Ferrero. On today's show, we have Marco Salinas. Marco is the owner of two different businesses, Pina, Colada Media, and Expert Publishing Associates. And both businesses are geared towards helping businesses attract more customers, turn more leads into clients. And the way that he does that is through Pina Colada. He helps produce podcasts, and then through Expert Publishing, he helps produce books. What's better than when you meet a potential new client being able to give them a book that shows that you're an expert in your field or your area, and he can help you do that very easily by interviewing you for an hour and then making a book out of it that will be somewhere between 70 to 80 pages long, and you'll become that authoritative figure. So I hope you enjoyed the show. Hey, Marco, nice to see you, man, and nice to meet you face to face for the first time.
Likewise, Will. I'm excited to talk with you, and really been actually looking forward to this conversation. So I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, me too. Just to get started, can you introduce yourself a little bit? Give us a little background about you.
Sure, absolutely. So I've been self-employed now for about maybe 13, 14 years. And that's really where I feel like my life started and truly, began was in being my own boss and having my own business. That's always been something that I felt was my calling. In many ways, it feels more like a vocation in a sense. Like it's just a part of me. It's who I am. It's who I was destined to be, and that sort of thing. I mean, the calling has been very strong. When I was younger, I was kind of that lemonade stand, down here in South Texas, man. We were all about these little lollipops that were called blow pops, and at the end of the thing there was bubble gum in there.
Yep.
And I remember selling those things in school and being somewhat of a merchant, type of a mindset like that. And for me, myself personally, that was just kind of the right fit. And I think that we've certainly evolved quite a bit in our mindset, or we're starting to, and people are starting to have a better understanding. Like, okay, some people are destined to be a college grad because they want to be like yourself. They want to go to law school. Others are better at doing things with their hands. Maybe they need to go to trade school. And then others maybe are more called to just be self-employed. And I'm definitely in that last and final category. So I had a financial services business that I was running for about 12, 13 years, and basically phased that one out as I started seeing some bigger issues with government regulation and things like that. I didn't really see a long-term pathway with that. But somewhere within that 13 years, I started really recognizing that what I enjoyed the most by far was marketing. That was my dessert in the whole equation. It certainly wasn't, filing my taxes, and doing any of that kind of stuff. Right. It was the fun and the excitement of trying a different strategy to generate leads and to try, a unique way to acquire a new customer. And then I started getting in deeper in it. I'm like, are there ways that I can actually market so effectively that by the time the prospect comes to me, they're like halfway already pre-sold? And so, man, like once I got a taste of stuff like that, I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked, because I realized that I was able to kind of, flip the script, for lack of a better term, on this whole buying equation. And I was able to set things up in a way where instead of me chasing the client, in many ways, they were chasing me. They were chasing after myself instead of me chasing them. And like I said, I was hooked, man. I'm like, this is the way to do business. Like, I don't, for another lack of a better term, I'm not trying to sound like Jay-Z, but it's like one of those, I don't chase them, I replace them with another one kind of things,
Okay.
But, with the mindset of the client, with the prospect, not so much as a girlfriend, right? But so I think that's a very powerful thing. We should always have a long line of people out the door that are interested in our services, because if you come along and you reach or meet someone that's not the right fit, you have the luxury of saying, I'm sorry, we're not the right fit for each other. And I have the luxury of cherry picking.
And really just working with your ideal client.
That's right. And that's what I'm doing now. I help businesses to achieve that very same thing through various different types of strategic marketing, most of which what we call authority marketing. And in authority marketing, you really do elevate your status. You elevate your positioning is what we call it, because your positioning becomes your position in the marketplace. And so if you got somebody who appears or comes across as desperate for business versus somebody who, there's a little bit of work to get to this person to be able to even sit down and talk with them. And when I go and I look up their name on Google, I see all kinds of, media out there that they're involved with. I'm probably going to take and value that guy's time a lot higher than the other person. And that's the kind of stuff that I work now towards helping businesses, specifically professional service providers, to achieve.
And so I know you do that with books, right? You help people write books. What other types of authority media do you put out there so that, the clients are chasing you?
Yeah. So the book is probably the biggest one. The word author, right, is the root word of authority. And that's, that's not a mistake. Right. And so the thing about a book is that the book will automatically convey a certain type of message. And that message being that you are an expert. Right. And so you can go around and call yourself an expert, or you can actually show people that you're an expert. And that's one of the beautiful things with a book, that message is conveyed for you. Right. So that's why that's one of the most important ones that we start with. Your question is, what else is out there? There's certainly a big variety of all kinds of different things, but we focus primarily on the book, and we also focus on helping business owners to produce their own podcasts. Exactly like what you're doing right now, right? Hosting a podcast also conveys a certain level of knowledge and a certain level of status as well. And there's also some of those media connotations that are just built into us by seeing somebody in that interviewer role, right? That's powerful. And then being interviewed on the other side of the table, like with where I am at today, that conveys a separate type of authority, because it implies that somebody's interested in hearing what you have to say, right? And so those are a big deal. Obviously, there's still old school radio, and that can be effective, depending on the industry. And of course, television is still a thing. Not everything is YouTube. Not everything is streaming. Some things, even though that does work in itself too. I mean, that's another very powerful form of media. I if you don't mind, I'll just tell a really quick story about the power of media in terms of relationship building, right? I found this guy on YouTube. I've always had a big thing for like just beautiful nature, like just being out in nature and camping by a campfire, like especially if it's like a kind of a gloomy, rainy type of weather, or maybe a little bit cold. I don't know what my problem is, man, but I've got an obsession with watching videos of people like sitting by a fire in a rainy setting while I enjoy the comforts of home and I don't have to feel that stuff. But for some reason, I like watching it, right? Especially if there's like a cooking element to it. Like if they throw down some food on the campfire, man, that's like my zen right there. That's my happy place. My blood pressure comes down and I feel really, relaxed. And I found this guy, and he has this channel where all he does is exactly what I just described. It's him and it's his dog, and they're in New Zealand, which I don't know if you know anything about New Zealand, but it's like one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And he goes and he finds all these unbelievably beautiful places to set up his little camp. And he sits out there and it's just literally him and the dog and the camera pointed at him. He's talking to us, his audience, and just talking about random things, life and what have you. And he comments a lot on what his dog is up to. He's got a border collie dog, and the dog's name is Bruce, right? And Bruce is his man's best friend, companion, right? And I just fell in love with this channel, man. The simplicity of it. And the story aspect of this thing was the fact that in watching this guy, I don't know this guy from Adam, right? Like I've never met the dude. I just watch him on the dang show. I really like the show. And in the last month or so, tragically, Bruce passed away.
Oh,
The dog, right?
mm-hmm.
And I cannot comprehend in my brain why I was so bothered by it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I'm like, I like animals. I like dogs, like the next guy, but I don't obsess over them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know these people. They're on the other side of the globe, but somehow I got wrapped into a emotional connection with these people, so much so that it almost felt like as if this was like a family member, like a
Right.
really close
like it
friend,
happened
right?
to you. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. And seeing the pictures of Tony, the guy whose show it is, and seeing him weeping and stuff, like it just tore me apart, man. I'm like, I could just empathize with him because I knew what a great companion Bruce was to him. Right. And then my marketing brain kicked in and I said, this is what is possible with media. And so there's the authority building aspect of it, and there's also the relationship building aspect of it. Even though we may not know a person, media also gives us that opportunity to create a connection with people who are our ideal audience, right? And hopefully if you have a business, ideally that could be your prospects.
Yeah.
And so there are a variety of different things that are out there. Television, again, this was a YouTube channel that I just explained as that example. Obviously, any type of form of media, including social media, has the potential to raise your status. Some are going to be more effective than others, as well as build a relationship, as it did in the example that I just gave with Tony and Bruce.
Right.
Yep. And so that's what's out there, man. That's it's just wild. It's crazy.
This episode of the Bronx Attorney Broadcast was brought to you by me, Will Ferrero. I'm an attorney at Prior Law in the Bronx. We primarily practice personal injury law, but we can help you with just about any legal issue that you may have. And if it's not something that we can personally help you with, we can connect you with an expert in that area of law. You can find me online on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. My handle is typically @Bronx Attorney. And if you can't find me on one of those social media pages, you can email me, ferrero@priorlaw.com, or call me at the office, 718-829-0222. And now back to the show. And you own 2 businesses, right?
I do. Yes.
And then you're a podcast producer or host in a third business?
So the hosting of podcasts is still very much connected with the production company.
Okay.
So my business is called Pina Colada Media, and we do the podcast hosting through that. But I have a platform called Business Innovators Radio Network, and this is where I'm able to add other business related podcasts onto that channel, onto that network. And there's a lot of clout in being part of a legitimate podcast network. This one, we've been around for 9 years.
Okay.
We've got over 6,500 episodes that have been processed through it. Yours truly was episode number 1, the very first. So nice. 9 years ago, 2014, we kicked that off. And so when you have a platform like that, the other person that really likes that is Google. Google really likes when people put out content that they consider to be valuable, especially because it's subject matter specific, right? So each show that we produce is very, very, very niched. Okay. It's all based upon a certain subject matter. So Google really likes that. So case in point, that very first podcast that I did on Business Innovators Radio Network was for a friend and client of mine who's a mortgage guy. I interviewed him about his mortgage company. And if you search that guy's name on Google, that listing comes up I think number 3 or number 4.
The show that you recorded.
That's right, on the Business Innovators Radio Network platform. So it is firmly planted there. It's not going anywhere. When somebody's saying, hey, I wonder if Mario is a legitimate mortgage guy, let me do a quick Google search. They come across that interview I did of him. They click on it. Maybe they'll just listen to a little sample of it. Maybe they'll listen to all of it. I don't know. But the point is, do you think that hurts him or helps him to have that kind of media out there when someone's trying to decide, should I do business with this guy or not?
Of course.
Right.
It's got to be super helpful. And especially
Exactly.
it also, I feel like it humanizes you to the client, right? Now you're not just the, sterile mortgage guy. Now you're also a person that has a personality, and they can connect with you better that way.
Boom. And then that's where that relationship building stuff that I was just telling you about starts to come in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it hits people in different areas on a psychological, point of view. And obviously with all this stuff that gets thrown at us every day, if somebody can go and search you out and seek you out and learn a little bit, want to know more about you, and then come across these medias, that's powerful, man. I think that's going to help. So that's the podcast production side. And then I also own Expert Publishing Associates, and this is where we put out different types of printed material, books as the primary thing, but we also do like physical newsletters. We still send a old school physical newsletter to your mailbox. And that going back to my point about relationship building, that is the number one focus of the print newsletter, is that it builds a relationship with the reader. So that's extremely powerful, because you're sending them something every month or every other month. We typically do every other month, and we found that it's still very effective to do it like that. And you're telling a little bit more about you. You're telling a little bit more about your personal story. You're not just talking shop 24/7. Matter of fact, we actually suggest not to talk a whole lot about shop, maybe a little bit, but make sure that you're including certain aspects of your personal life and who you are, for the point that you just brought up a minute ago. People want to know that they're still doing business with another human being. It's powerful.
Yeah. And then the storytelling aspect of it as well. So would you say it's like a quarter of like, here's some tips on my industry if you're going to, be a client, and then 75%, here's what I'm doing, in my personal life?
So it's more like probably 30% of the personal stuff. And the rest of it is what we call warm and fuzzies. So the warm and fuzzy would be 5 tips to help you, organize your life for the new year. Like that was something that we did in January. For the summer, we might talk about a awesome, margarita, watermelon margarita recipe, something like that. There might be, the last one we just did had a lot of cool summertime related stuff, because that's still a very important component of the newsletter. People like the warm and fuzzy stuff. There's some jokes on there.
So like for me, would you be putting that in like the personal injury newsletter? You'd still be putting, the margarita recipe in there, even though.
Oh, let me tell you 100%. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, let's say we were to send that to chiropractors. Let's say you had a list of 20 chiropractor offices. Who works at the chiropractor office? Usually, there's several secretaries that work up at the front. So they're going to be playing around with that. They're going to want to do the Sudoku. They're going to be grateful for that watermelon recipe that's in there, right? Because they're on the clock. They're a little bored.
Put eyeballs on it, in other words. Gotcha.
That's right. And then hopefully at least the guy who runs the shop will mostly read that relationship builder newsletter at the very beginning. Right. And so that's how you're able to sneak in. You're able to stay top of mind. You're able to also grow that relationship with those people in that office. And then they feel better referring clients to you, because they're like, I don't know, man, kind of like with me and Tony and Bruce, right? I feel like I know this guy.
Yeah.
I know how many kids he has. I know that's his favorite dog, and the dog is named so-and-so. I know you're in New York, so it's more likely you got dogs than you have kids, but so it just depends, right? It just depends. Whatever it is you're doing, you want to talk a little bit about that. You want to share a little bit of your softer side, because again, you nailed it on the head. People relate to other people. And so that's why those things are very effective.
And so tell me a little bit more about the books, because I find that to be, a fascinating marketing tool, right? Everybody says, your card might go in the trash. They take a photo of it and then lose it in a drawer, but the book will sit on the desk maybe, or go on the bookshelf, or be given to a friend. So what does it look like when you start working with you on, making a book?
Yeah, great question.
Writing a book.
Great question. So first and foremost, to your point, yes, Long shelf life. That's one of the number one, top characteristics of producing a book, or top benefits, I should say, maybe of producing a book, is that whoever you give it to, there's a very, very small chance that it'll get thrown away, right? Compare that to more traditional marketing, which is the business card, maybe a brochure, maybe a flyer. Some of those brochures and flyers are not cheap as well. You got the nice glossy paper, 6 pages, 8 pages, 10 pages, whatever. You try to leave some information, but you know what? Most likely it's still going to get thrown away. They don't have a very long shelf life, whereas we are conditioned at a very young age to really respect and appreciate books. Number one, when we were in grade school, we get in trouble if we didn't take care of the library books.
Yeah.
Number two, I don't know if you had this. I'm a little older than you. I don't know if you had this when you were in school, but we had this thing called the book fair.
Yeah, of course.
Book
fair was huge.
What a big deal, right?
Yeah.
What a big deal, And I mean, I was in elementary in the early 90s, and I would walk into the library and it smelled different because of all the books, right?
Yeah,
so immediately I'd get some sort of like this dopamine hit from just the smell of the thing. And then I'd look up and there was my mom gave me $20 whatever that morning. If you were really lucky, your mom gave you $20, right? For the book fair. But what was the first thing I went after? Not the book, actually. I went after the Lamborghini Countach poster. That was the main thing that I had my eyes on. But after I got my poster, then I'd start looking around at the books, and you'd go back to the room and you'd share the book that you had with your friend. You look at the one that he got. So we know that these are valuable things. We also know that when we're doing research and we're trying to learn something, yes, nowadays a lot of things are most certainly online, but like you can see back here behind me, I mean, I'm big on reading books about, those are mostly business related.
Yeah.
But whatever your subject matter that you're really interested in, most likely you'll still go out of your way to find a book. I mean, that's Amazon's claim to fame, right? That's how they got started, was really they were an online bookstore first before everything else, before they became the everything store.
Yeah.
And so we all understand deep down how valuable a book is. And again, like I was mentioning earlier, the book automatically conveys authority and automatically conveys the fact that you're an expert in your niche, right? So people don't question that. Plus, we do physical books, so it's a tangible thing. So you're touching it, you're holding it. We put a little price tag on the back. We usually put $9.99 on the back of the thing. But what we do is we design and create these books for the purpose of giving them away. So these are very much what we call the ultimate business card. I mean, that's what these books are. They're intended to be given either in place of or along with your card, right? And again, this is going to stick around. It's going to stay on the desk. People are going to pick it up, read a little snippet here or there. Even if they only read a little bit, I'll be honest, it still does its job. It's really let the person know that you're different, that you're a somebody, that you know what you're talking about. It's a conversation starter, so you can actually say, hey, this is my lawyer. My lawyer actually gave me a book. What did your lawyer give you?
Yeah.
And so, and I've done a wide range of trades and industries where you might even say, there's no way you could do a book for that industry. We've been able to do a book. Let me tell you.
What's the most surprising one, would you say?
One of the ones that you probably wouldn't expect would be a plumber.
Okay.
Right. So every time the plumber goes to the person's house to go fix a pipe, when they're done, thank you for everything. Oh, and by the way, here's a book. And the book basically just talks about like things you need to be aware of that maybe you didn't know you should be aware of. Like,
interesting.
Like taking care of your water heater. Did you know that thing's supposed to get drained once a year?
Wow.
Down here in Texas, we have really hard water. Right? There's all that limestone stuff, and it builds up all this garbage within the water heater, and it basically destroys it. And so we have to drain these things annually. Well, we're supposed to, but people go years without doing it. And then the thing starts making all this noise, and they're like, why is it doing that? Well, it's because you got all that buildup in there. And if you don't have a water softener, you're going to have nothing but problems. And so the book talks about the benefit of a water softener.
Yeah.
And so maybe you went over there, Will, maybe they went over there for a $99, quick fix of a pipe, right? But they leave the book, the person flips through it, they realize that, oh shoot, I haven't cleaned my doggone water heater out.
Right.
And you know what? It's making a lot of noise. And they're like, you know what? Maybe we should consider getting a water softener. So they call the plumber back. The plumber comes in and says, we recommend that you replace your water heater and you get a water softener so that next time this thing doesn't go out on you.
Mm-hmm.
And now you just went from a $99 job to a, several $1,000 job by installing that water heater and water softener for them. So even in that type of an environment, it's extremely powerful and it's effective, and it's a great upsell tool, and it's a trust builder. And then I do usually recommend, if you can give your client a book, most likely you can also give your client a newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
So then if you show up every other month in the mail and you're talking about some tips and tricks to keep all your pipes in order during the winter so that they don't get destroyed, and you also talk about the fact that you just went to the beach with your family and you talked about your daughter who is 3 years old and she really loves this and that, again, you are doing something very different from the other plumber guys that are not taking the time to educate their clients with a book, to show that they're somebody and they're knowledgeable, to show up every other month with a newsletter and explain why, you actually know your stuff and build a relationship. Now, I digress just a little bit, Will, but let me just mention real quick, the book itself is a done for you process. Mm-hmm. You don't have to write anything with our process. We do a podcast. We ask the right questions. You answer the questions on the podcast because you are the expert. You do know the answers to these questions. And then we basically take that, we transcribe it, we clean it up, we edit it for readability, and we turn it into a very easy to read, short, 100-page or less question and answer book. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially the process that we use, because guys like you and other professional service providers are usually busy.
Yeah. How long of a podcast do you do to get all that information?
We can, in most instances, we can get everything that we need with a 1-hour podcast.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Most of the time we can, and we're able to produce a book that's on average between 60 to 80 pages long. Mm-hmm. Let's admit it, right? We're in the digital attention span economy. Mm-hmm. So people don't want to feel like, oh man, this book makes me feel like you sent me back to, college again.
Yeah.
So the question and answer format works really well because it's just little question, little answer, little question, little answer. And that's what people appreciate. They just want little short bits of info to help them, learn what they're looking for and get their questions answered.
And I'm willing to bet that, when you do have the book or you're getting the newsletter, you're willing to pay that person a little bit more than the random Google find that you might have. Do you have any? Yeah. You have any data to support that, or do you just generally find that?
I generally find it. Yeah, I don't have a hardcore statistic to back it up, but that is a pretty rock solid, side benefit, so to speak, of doing things like this. Anything that's in the authority building space typically will justify a higher fee,
right? In
most cases, because customers are willing to pay a little bit extra for someone that they at least they can perceive to be more knowledgeable, have more expertise, have more experience and things like that. And so usually any type of thing, if I'm appear on television, if I do a radio spot, if I do a podcast, if I do a book, all of that stuff is a almost an immediate justification for charging more. Mm-hmm. And your customers usually will love you for it because they like to pay more because they feel like they're getting a better value. And we all know that old ideology as far as like you get what you pay for.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's a very simple thing that we all get told that at a very young age. We all understand that concept of you get what you pay for. Right. But yeah, I mean, that's a very general rule. Absolutely. And I saw that with my own business, with my financial business. I did a book with a business coach and a sales coach named Brian Tracy. And Brian Tracy's a legend, man, in the business world. I mean, if you go to Barnes and Noble right now, you will find at least 1 or 2 books that he's written there. And so I was able to do a book with him on corporate credit. I covered the corporate credit and he covered more of like goal setting and business growth stuff. Okay. And that book's called The Small Business Banker. Now I'm not in that world anymore, but that was one of the things that really kicked things off for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I started noticing that transition from, again, I'm chasing you to you chasing me, as well as justification for higher fees.
Okay. And so how would you, say there's somebody who hasn't really done that much marketing, even if it's a, older company, and it was mainly word of mouth, aside from, how do people get ready to write the book, or to work with you to have the book produced?
Sure. Yeah. Well, my response to that would be that you very likely already have that knowledge, because that's probably the reason why you got into that line of work in the first place. A lot of people, even when they're new, it's like, okay, I'm going to start. Let's just go back to the plumber, right? I'm going to start my own plumbing company. Well, that guy was a plumber for sure for several years with somebody else, right? He just decided it's time for me to go ahead and do my own thing. And so that's usually the case for everyone. Most people are really good at their trade. What they're not good at is marketing. And Will, when you went to law school, how many classes did you take about client acquisition, and marketing?
Yeah, none.
Right.
That's something that comes up all the time. No, no business class, no marketing class, anything like that in law school.
That's correct. That's correct. And let me tell you, I have several really good friends, really close friends, that are lawyers. Now I've got a couple that are in particular that are really good friends. These are the one of them is a godfather to one of my children and things like that. And these are criminal lawyers. Okay. And like we're doing a book for one of them right now, as a matter of fact, and he wants to use it to give to other lawyers.
Yeah.
And so that way because that's where this guy gets the majority of his clients from, right? He's
lawyer to lawyer referrals are huge.
It's a big thing. And they come pre-sold, all that kind of good stuff. They're like, yeah, man, I heard you were amazing. My divorce lawyer told me you were the man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So it's not a real difficult sale in that regard. But imagine him being able to say, oh, and by the way, here's his book. Let me give you his book. He came in here the other day, gave me a little stack of them. I got them right here. I'm very sorry you got a DWI. And here's the book on, what to expect, when you just went to jail for the very first time.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Right. And so those work very well in that type of an environment. And okay, I'm sorry, Will, what was your question? I lost track of that again.
I was just saying, how do you, prepare yourself to get the book produced? But it sounds like you're saying that if you're a business owner, you have these tools already. All you got to do is, send you the email or pick up the phone and, get the process rolling, and you could have a book.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what it was
to produce
so
it.
The point is, you do have the knowledge, right? You may not have the knowledge of marketing because, again, they don't cover that in school. But you, even as a newer-ish lawyer, you certainly have a pretty basic understanding of that field of law that you've entered. Now, they do call it practicing law for a reason, because you learn a lot as you go along, and my friends have all admitted to me, like, when I first started, I wasn't the most knowledgeable. It took some time, and I had to go to court, and I had to interact with people, and then I started learning things. But you do come out of law school, you passed the bar for a reason, right? And so you were able to prove that you had that basic competency in that field of study. And so even right out the gate, typically you're going to be able to answer at least the basic questions, because that's what we're covering. We are covering the basics for somebody that's coming in raw, that doesn't really know what to expect, right? What's going to happen if I get into an auto accident and an 18-wheeler bumped into me and it messed up my arm? Like, what do I do from this point forward?
Right.
I don't know what to do, and I am seeking answers. I don't even really know who to trust. I just see commercials everywhere, and the
commercials and billboards and jingles.
Yeah, the guy's yelling at me, the hammer. Here in Texas, we got the hammer. We're the Texas hammer, and all this kind of stuff, right? And they're appealing to your emotions in regards to that, and it obviously it works. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. But at the same time, I think there's other people that are like, man, I am not. I can tell you, I'm like this. I'm not down with those gimmicky commercials.
Right.
So I've noticed the latest trend is that there's a lot of PI attorneys here that are saying, like, we're serious. We're the serious lawyer. We don't have time for those gimmicks.
Yeah.
We don't play those little games. You got injured. You're in pain. You can't work. This is not a joke. We're serious. We want to help you. Right. And so all of those opportunities, though, present themselves as, hey, I'm the guy that's here to teach you. I can educate you. And that's what these books accomplish.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that more people should do that. I'm certainly going to look into it. I'll tell you that much. I've
Awesome.
thought about it in the past, but it's you're making it sound real easy.
We do make it easy. I promise you that. Like I said, if you can do a podcast interview, essentially you could create a book. But we got to make sure we ask the right questions, though. And we got to make sure that we put it together in a way where it's easy to read and it still looks professional. The books that we put out, they've got the glossy cover. They've got your picture on there. So there's some of the branding. There's some of that relationship building by the fact that they see you on there. All that kind of good stuff plays into it. But these are very professionally produced little marketing assets. That's what they are. They're marketing assets, and they're worth the investment because, again, they're not just ending up in the recycle bin. Yeah. They're not just ending up in the trash. They're going to be around. Your mother's going to be proud of them, for crying out loud. She's going to tell her friends about them. Oh, look at what my son produced, and then your client, most of all, is the one that matters because they're the one that pays you ultimately. They're the ones that are going to really be proud of these things, and they're going to share them with their friends and family as well. So overall, it's a really good, worthwhile marketing investment and marketing asset.
Gotcha. I got one last question for you, and you can answer it either from the business owner standpoint or the marketing standpoint. When someone is just beginning, maybe they're in the first year of their new business, what tips or advice would you give them?
That's a great question, Will. And I always enjoy getting asked stuff that I wasn't expecting, so that you can hear more of a raw, a real response. But man, that's a role that I have been in before. And I've been in that role multiple times as I've started other little business ventures on the side and what have you. So I know exactly where that's at. First and foremost, year one of any business is brutal. So let's make sure we establish that.
Be ready for that. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you need to be ready to be dragged through the mud. No question about it. And it's probably going to be a frequent occurrence as well. Year one of any business is always very challenging. But I do recommend, though, that you, in addition to going out, hustling, networking is a big one, right? You got to do things on more of a grassroots point of view because you don't have the big, giant marketing budget yet.
Yeah.
So step number one is to tell yourself, I'm not Apple. I'm not Coca-Cola. I'm not these big giant companies that I see on the billboards or running these commercials because they've got unlimited budgets for stuff like that. I have to make sure that all of my dollars are held accountable. So that's the first thing. You want to make sure that you are very cautious in where you invest your money and make sure it's something that has the likelihood of giving you a legitimate ROI. Right. And a lot of times you do have to just go out there and do very old school methods, which is shaking hands, meeting new people. I like the idea of joining networking groups like BNI, Business Networking International, is a decent place to start. You got Chamber of Commerce groups as well. All the Chamber of Commerce organizations, they put on networking functions like after hours. Yeah. That gives you an opportunity to get out there. And I think, in my opinion, what I've seen is if you're a lawyer, you already have a big advantage because, in those environments, everybody wants to schmooze the lawyer, man. Everybody feels like, oh, man, if I could be friends with this guy, what a great little benefit to be able to know another lawyer.
Just to get the free advice via text.
Right. That's right. That's right. And so you already get to be the life of the party, right? Right out the gate. So that's also kind of a cool step. But I do always recommend as well, make sure that you set aside time for learning. Most of this stuff you're not going to know, whether you went to law school, whether you went to plumbing school, whether you just decided out of nowhere, I want to start a business. Most of the time, unless your father or you shadowed under someone or somebody else in your family, had a business and you got to sit there and just be a sponge for 10, 15 years. Right. You're probably not going to know a lot of this stuff. So you've got to go out and find it. And I highly recommend going to the bookstore, finding books on whatever, marketing or different sales and negotiation, all these type of things that we have to use on a daily basis as business owners. Learn those things.
Yeah.
Listen to audiobooks, man. Those are game changers. You could go for a run in the park and you can listen to an audiobook, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You can go down to the market. You can go to the supermarket, right? And you don't have to talk to anybody. Put your headphones on, put your earbuds in, go shopping while you're listening to an audiobook about marketing.
Yeah.
Right? Find ways to be double productive. I don't know how it is, Will, up there where you're at, but down here we still get to spend a lot of time in the car driving around, right? Mm-hmm. And so if I'm taking a road trip, if I'm going up to Austin or I'm going to Houston or something, or if I'm going on the other side of town, I turn my vehicle into a university on wheels every time. And I start listening to my favorite audiobooks, and I make sure that my time is productive. Yeah, every now and then, dude, I just need to listen to some Jay-Z or whatever.
Yeah.
Just to get that out. But then after that, it's time to get down to business and let's start being productive and let's start making good uses of our time and learning those things. And then you turn around and you try to implement as best as you can. So that's my advice for newcomers and early people in whatever game they're in.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great advice. And I had a lot of fun talking to you today. I learned a lot. So thank you.
Awesome, man. Likewise, Will. That was a pleasure, man. I'm sorry about my doggone camera issues. I don't know why I could not get it back on.
Take care.
But thanks for having me, Will. Have a good one.
You too. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bronx Attorney Broadcast. Please like, review, and subscribe so we can help the channel continue to grow. And if you're interested in connecting with any of the guests, please let me know, and I'd be happy to make the introduction.